Catus, Maximus here. Just a little quick review of these O'Reilly's GM PowerTorque lug nut sockets. They call these wheel protector sockets. They are pretty nice, but they are charging for these. Actually, a lot of PowerTorque tools are reasonably priced, but these sockets are running $13 on the shelf, regular price per socket, or $60 for a 5-piece set, which means they're $12.50 even when you're getting them in a set. I got 19 and 21 most common sizes I end up running into, although they do have a 7/8 and a 13/16 as well as a 17 millimeter. I do have a couple of the Pittsburgh. We have the cheaper 3-piece Pittsburgh set and the slightly better 7-piece Harbor Freight set. Both of these are okay for the price. The 7-piece set of these is, only like 15 or 20 bucks, so a fraction of the price of these PowerTorques, and generally work fine. Now, let's take a look at these PowerTorques. They are pretty nicely made. Nice deep roll stamping there, very easy to read. Proper impact with the through hole on both sides, and then the undercut ring, fluted drive. They do have a plastic insert, so if you have the tall lug nuts, the back of the socket won't beat the end of the lug nut and cause any damage. What I like is this ring. It could be aluminum, but it may be steel that's just been anodized or even painted, like on this Harbor Freight. I thought this was anodized, but it's shipping off like it's some type of paint versus what a good anodization does, which is actually bonds to the surface. I like that design because it is a nice little ring. That ring is under a clear plastic sleeve, so you can see what color it is, and it kind of adds to a nice effect, the black socket with that ring. They did undercut the sockets, but I assume that the ring kind of helps reinforce the end. If we take a real close look in there, you can see that they serrate the flats of this socket, and I think that's kind of interesting. I wonder why PowerTorque doesn't have normal chrome sockets that have this serrations, but I think that's kind of an interesting idea. It is a fluted socket, but adding the serrations just gives it a little bit more bite. And I like that, and I'm surprised that it's only on these more expensive sockets. One thing I was also noticing, they do a little undercut, and then they have these little lips inside this sleeve so that it actually wants to stay on. And that was part of the impetus of really getting these. Because if you have a tight wheel, sometimes the sleeve will bind up a little bit in there, or somehow just manipulating the socket, you end up pulling on the sleeves, and it gets pretty tiresome to use a socket and end up in some situation where the sleeve just comes off. Same here. I mean, this one, the sleeve barely even stays on there. And then you end up with just a normal socket that's beating up the wheel. That's the whole point of these plastic covers, is so that when you put them in the wheel, that you don't beat up the hole around where the lug nut goes. But you can see they just did a little bit of knurling, but it was linear or long ways, when it should have just been some grooves running around the circumference, so it would have held this a lot better. But it does get annoying having these sockets with the sleeves just barely stay on there. And these PowerTorques, obviously, there we go, that was a little, try to resolve that. These sleeves are actually on there pretty good, because there's 2 little grooves, and those 2 little plastic rings fit in them, and so you have to strip off those plastic rings or really beat these up. So I think they're a nice looking, well designed socket. If we take a look at the fit, I think I have a 19 millimeter here. At least on the 19 millimeter, it does work pretty well, and you can see what the idea of the serrations is. They're right in the center, so if it ends up you have a mostly stripped out lug nut, I guess, that those serrations may provide just an extra little bit of grab onto the surface of the nut, and might be able to remove it without rounding it. So anyway, I did want to do a little review of these. I've been avoiding kind of picking these up because they are pretty expensive for single 1/2-inch drive deep well sockets, but they are pretty nice lug nut sockets, and they definitely are nicer than either of the offerings that Harbor Freight has. It just, O'Reilly's is definitely charging for these. And I was noticing on O'Reilly's website, they're selling some OTC tools now, which is definitely a professional brand. So it seems O'Reilly's is trying to stick with setting themselves apart from AutoZone and like Advance by actually having nicer tools. And I do like these lug nut sockets, so I'll end up picking up the rest of the set. Just because in particular they have one with the purple ring, which I think is pretty cool. but I do like these designs. These are nice. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.